Why are you keeping rib bones and making wind chimes out of them? Hey y'all, it's me Sydney and welcome back to Planet Syd. So today we are going to be tier ranking some of the most unhinged and craziest unsubs off of the show Criminal Minds. So if you guys are fans like me, I hope you guys enjoy this video. So yeah, let's get into it. And before we get started, I do just want to give all the categories for the rankings. So the first category that we have for the ranks is going to be officer, and that one is the one at the very bottom. So this one is just like the mild, you know, like obviously it's just the base level of craziness, but you guys, y'all just need to go to jail, whatever. You just need to go to jail. But in comparison to everybody else who I'm going to be listing, they are pretty okay. Yeah, so that's the first tier. And then the next one that we have is the you need to repent category. So this category is for the unsubs who obviously need to go to jail as well, but also like you need like some help. Like you need like a guru, a therapist, Jesus, something. Like you need to like get it together. So yeah, so the you need to repent category, that's for people who really just need to like seek help and try and just get it together or something along with them going to jail. And so the next category that we have is not you bitch. And with this category, these are the unsubs who really caught me off guard in the episodes, whether it be like it was a big reveal and somebody who I wasn't expecting, or maybe I just didn't want it to be them as the unsub. So these are the people who kind of surprised me and had a little bit of a twist. So that one is the not you bitch category. And the next category that we have is there is a special place in hell. So these are the obviously all of the unsubs are terrible people, but these are just like the lowest of the lows. Like there's a special place in hell for you, just depending on what they did and who their targets were and everything, and just like how heinous some of their crimes were. So yeah, these are the unsubs where there is a special place in hell for them. And the next and last category that we have is the door is gone. And so these are the unsubs who I think are just completely unhinged, because the writers of Criminal Minds, like I don't even know how they come up with some of these crimes and like some of these unsubs as well. And yeah, obviously if you watch Criminal Minds, you know some of those fucking unsubs are just insane and unhinged. So that's where they'll be going. So yeah. And before we get into it, I just want to give a quick little disclaimer that obviously I don't want to make light of like anything serious like murder or anything, but this is a fictional show based off of fictional people as well, and these are fictional criminals. So yeah, but anyways, let's get into our first unsub, and we are going to be going in order of appearance. I think I have like a list of like 32 unsubs, but I'm just going to be listing them in appearance. So the first one that we have is from season 1, episode 22, and that is Randall Garner, aka the Fisher King. And so basically, this is the episode where the team finally gets a vacation for 2 weeks, I believe. And so Morgan and Elle, they go to vacation in Jamaica, and then Hotch is just doing like his family man stuff. Reed goes to see his mom, and Gideon is like in like his little cabin with his girlfriend or whatever. And so everybody's just trying to enjoy their little vacation, but then out of nowhere, the hotel gets a tip that there was a murder. And so when they start to investigate it, they see that there's this blood trail, and the trail leads them to Elle's room, and she's just in there knocked the fuck out, don't know what's going on, so she ends up getting arrested. And meanwhile, back in the US, somebody sends a head to Gideon's cabin and sent like a butterfly to JJ and like a poem, and then sent a skeleton key to Reed, and like knew where all they were at. So basically this unsub, like he kind of roped them into like this whole like game, and so they had to like follow all these clues and everything. And they also had to prove to like the authorities in Jamaica that Elle wasn't the actual killer and that she was being framed and everything. With all the clues that the unsub is leaving, he's basically talking about saving her. And basically she ends up being a girl that's tied up in this dude's basement. Yeah, so basically the team is just doing this whole game of cat and mouse. And then fast forward, Elle ends up getting shot because they are working around the clock, and they let Elle go home, but nobody really supervised her or like made sure that she got in safe. So he ends up shooting Elle, and then it's revealed that the unsub stayed at the same facility as Reed's mother, and his victim that he was keeping was his daughter, who had ended up being adopted by another family after a terrible house fire which he was injured in. So I'm just gonna put Randall Gardner in the officer category, because like obviously he needs to go to jail, but then like the whole thing with his daughter, even though she was locked up in the basement, like I mean you're obviously going to jail for that, even though he blew himself up, so I guess he isn't going to jail. But yeah, like I don't know, he had like a really interesting story, and so in comparison to everybody else, yeah, I'm just gonna put you in the officer category. Like you just need to go to jail. But anyways, the next unsub that we have is from season 2, episode 5, and this is Miss L. So basically in this episode, this was about an unsub who was a serial rapist, and so they were going to use L to like try and lure him in so he could so like they can set up a scenario and he can get caught and they can arrest him. But basically Elle kind of goes rogue, and she's obviously still suffering from PTSD from being shot like a few episodes prior, and also due to like the circumstances of her being shot, she really doesn't trust anyone on the team as well, and that's manifesting a lot in how she's dealing with the case. You can tell that she's not ready to be back on the job, but she is, and she's going undercover to try and lure this serial rapist in. And so basically she ends up shooting and killing him with no probable cause, and she like kind of hid out in like a dumpster or something and like found him and shot him and killed him. And then so when people were starting to become suspicious of her, like girl, like nothing even popped off, and like we didn't even get a confession or anything out of him. She basically lied and said that the unsub approached her and she had to defend herself. So that is, I mean, you know, he was a serial rapist and obviously he needed to go to jail. I mean, you still need to do your job, and like that's like still kind of technically police brutality. So L girl, officer, like you need to go to jail. If you watch the show, she didn't, but you need to go to jail, girl, because that's still not okay. So the next unsub that we have is from season 2, episode 6, and this is ᵗʰᵉⁱ So basically in this episode, a lot of kids are disappearing in a very small Texas town and are resurfacing murdered, and basically it's just really sad and horrific because obviously kids are being killed and they're trying to figure out who's doing it. And so people are suspecting it's this man that lives in like a house on a hill or something, because it's like some urban legend about him. They all like start to think that it's him, and then as the case starts to go on, they start to like think that it's one of the kids' fathers, but then we all come to find out that it's one of the kids, like he's like an 8, 9, 10-year-old boy, and he's out here killing all the other fucking kids. When I tell you, well, his name is ᵗʰᵉⁱ, but when I tell you, I was so fucking shocked, because like not you a kid killing other kids as well, and we over here like thinking it's this old man that lives in this fucking house on the hill and he just minding his damn business. So I'm gonna put ᵗʰᵉⁱ in the not you bitch category, because I was least suspecting that it would be you. Like, what are you doing? Oh yeah, ᵗʰᵉⁱ, you're going in the not you bitch category. So moving on, the next unsub that we have is from season 2, episode 7, and this unsub is Marcus Younger. And so basically in this episode, after a high school pep rally, 3 best friends end up disappearing. They all left the exact same voicemail to their parents saying that they took off on a road trip, but obviously that was sketchy, so that's when the police get involved and everything. And basically this unsub, Marcus Younger, is holding all 3 of the girls hostage, and he forces them to decide which one of the 3 is going to die so the other 2 can survive. He forced the girls to pick which of them deserved to live and which one deserved to die. So basically 2 of the girls were in a way forced to team up and kill one of the other girls, and they were all best friends. And so that is just fucking terrible. Like, Marcus Younger, you are a fucking terrible person. And the thing that was so like sad about it is like he's over here forcing the girls to kill each other. So he's not like, obviously you're kidnapping people, but you're not even like doing the crime or anything. So I'm just gonna put him in the there's a special place in hell category, because that is sick. You're making a teenage girl, 2 teenage girls kill their best friend. The next unsub that we have is from season 2, episode 12, and this is Carl Buford. I'm sure if you are a Criminal Minds stan like me, then you know who ᵗʰᵉ Buford is. But if you don't know, ᵗʰᵉ Buford, he murdered a teenager and then he framed Derek Morgan for it because he was basically a pedophile and he ended up molesting Derek Morgan when he was a child and like young, and trying to get like a football scholarship because he was like his mentor in like the city that he grew up in Chicago. And so he started off with Derek and then he just kept on doing it to other young boys. And when they would, and basically the boy that he killed, I believe he was about to like expose him or something, and so he ended up killing him and he framed Derek Morgan for it. Number one, you killed a teenage boy and you framed somebody else for it, but then on top of that, you're literally a pedophile. So there is a special place in hell for you, especially like you kind of fucked Derek up. Like, how fucking dare you? Like, nobody deserves that, but not Derek. Like, that broke my little heart for Derek. So there is a special place in hell for you, ᵗʰᵉ Buford. So that's where you're going. So the next unsub that we have, this is when it gets interesting. The next unsub that we have is from season 2, episode 13, and it is Frank Breitkopf. I think I'm saying that right. He actually appeared in multiple episodes. So he first appeared in season 2, episode 13, and then he appeared in season 2, episode 23 as well. And basically Frank, he has killed hundreds of women over the span of 30 years. He would kill them and then he would dump their limbs along the interstates. And that's how the police got involved, because they kept on finding limbs and they were eventually able to trace it back to him. But Frank, he would basically stalk his victims and he would kidnap them by injecting a drug that would paralyze them but keep them awake. And then he would remove their organs one by one while they are still alive. And then he would kill them, and then he would keep a rib bone as like a souvenir, and he made like wind chimes out of the rib bones from all his victims and shit. Really fucking terrible piece of fucking shit. And so also throughout all this, since he's been killing people over the span of 30 years and he has hundreds of victims, he basically ends up becoming Gideon's nemesis, because Gideon, like, he's just the one person who can outsmart Gideon and they can outsmart each other. And so basically this is the case that led to Gideon resigning from the BAU and the FBI eventually. And basically of all the victims that Frank had, of the hundreds of victims, it was one who had survived, which is Jane. But she ended up being institutionalized because obviously like her being kidnapped by him really did a number on her mentally, and she never really fully recovered. And so basically in Frank's head, he believed that like it's something special about her since she like survived it or whatever. And so he believes that he's in love with her. And so basically he outsmarts the BAU again, and he basically hijacked a school bus full of young children and had them in like a specific location. And so basically he told the FBI that, you know, there's a school bus full of children, and so you can give me Jane and you will save all these children, or you can die and they're gonna die. So he kind of forced them to give him Jane, and then they kind of just disappeared and then went off the map, which he then reappears again a few episodes later, and then they both die together. But yeah, and then he reappears in this episode just to hunt down Gideon, and then he kills Gideon's girlfriend, Sarah. And then Frank would proceed to kill some of the other almost victims that the team had previously saved from other cases as well. And so that whole ordeal, obviously you killed hundreds of women, and then you killed Gideon's girlfriend, and you kind of ruined Gideon, and you forced him to resign from the BAU and the FBI. So, and also on top of killing all these women and disposing of their limbs, you paralyzed them and then took out their organs while they were still alive and kept their rib bones as decorations and made wind chimes out of them. The door is gone. Frank, you are unhinged. Why are you keeping rib bones and making wind chimes out of them? Like, that is terrifying. So the door is gone. So that's where you're going, Frank. Moving along, the next unsub that we have is from season 2, episode 15. And this is Tobias Henkel and Raphael and Charles. So basically, ᵘⁿʰᵱᵉ, this is the man who had ended up kidnapping and torturing Dr. Spencer Reid. But Tobias, it's him, and then he also has split personality disorder. So due to his traumatizing childhood, so he would switch in between Tobias Henkel, his father Raphael, and then Charles as well. And so basically, his father Raphael used to use the Bible to abuse Tobias, him as a boy. And so basically he kind of turned into a serial killer, and then he would he would record it and then post the videos to the internet. And that's how the FBI got involved. And then eventually that's when he ended up kidnapping Reid. And then on top of him kidnapping Reid and torturing him, he ended up introducing Reid to Dilaudid, which he ended up struggling with for the rest of the fucking series with his drug problem. So fuck you, Tobias, Charles, and Raphael. So since obviously this is one person, but it's 3 different personalities, for Tobias, I'm just going to say that you need to repent. Like, you're still going to jail, but like you really need help. But Raphael and Charles, there's a special place in hell for y'all, so that's where y'all can go. But Tobias, you just need to repent, and you're still going to go to jail, but you should probably seek help from somebody. So the next unsub that we have is from season 3, episode 3, and this is Dr. Stanley Howard. And this is like one of like the standout unsubs. He was a psychiatrist, and he basically lured his patients who had really bad phobias, and he would put out ads saying that he could help cure and heal their phobias and everything. Ends up basically using their phobias against them and ends up killing them. So somebody who was like afraid of drowning, he drowned them. Somebody who was claustrophobic, he buried them alive. Like, that is evil. What is wrong with you, Dr. Stanley Howard? Evil. So the door is gone, because like the fact that you can even conceptualize that and like go through all those years of medical school and then just throw that all away, you're unhinged. And like, I just cannot imagine like your worst fear being used against you, and like that's how you die. Like, that is just terrible. So the next unsub that we have is from season 3, episode 6, and this is Max Poole, aka the Have You Seen Me murderer. And this is where it got scary, because basically this fucking unsub, he would stalk his victims, and then right before he's about to like kidnap and kill them, he will put like these "Have you seen me" like missing flyer posters of like the person who has yet to go missing, but the person would see them, and then that's when he would snatch them up and everything. And basically he would go even further by cutting up his victims' faces, and then he would leave like this Jabberwocky type of masks at the crime scene. But yeah, like he literally stole their faces and like did like the whole "Have you seen me" thing, like they're like a missing person, and then you chop off their faces and then you leave a mask at the scene as well. Like, that is unhinged behavior as well. So the door is gone for you as well. So that's where you're going, Mr. Max Poole, because what? Like, do you know how much planning that takes to like find your victim and then make the flyers and then make sure like the flyers are in the correct place so they can see them, and then kidnap them when they see? Like, that is just terrifying. So the door is gone for you. So the next unsub that we have is from season 3, episode 8, and this is Floyd Phelan Farrell. This motherfucking unsub, bitch. So basically Floyd, he was a serial killer who would abduct his victims and dismember them, and then he would carve like these satanic symbols into them. But he was also a cannibal, and he fed his victims like their own fingers, and then he also had like this gourmet cookbook of like different cannibal casseroles and shit that he would fucking make. And he even went so far as to create his own like restaurant, and it was a barbecue shop called Phelan's Fine Barbecue, and he would serve his own quote-unquote recipes, which was fucking people stew. And he even went so far as to serve some human stew at a search party of the victim that he had killed, and he's serving her up in a fucking stew to her friends and family who are looking for her. You literally killed somebody, showed up to the fucking search party, with the victim that you killed, chopped up, served up in a stew, and then you feed it to the people who are looking for her. And everybody just ate it. Obviously they didn't know, but the door is gone. Like, obviously you're a cannibal, so the door is gone, but you really took it even further by like feeding it to the search party. Like, how fucking what? The writers of Criminal Minds honestly need like a fucking raise. They need their salary doubled, whatever the fuck, because I don't even know how they can even conceptualize some of this stuff with these people. Like, it's like insane. But yeah, Floyd, the door is gone. That's where you're going. Like, I have no hope for you. I don't know what your deal is. You're insane. And so the next unsub that we have is from season 3, episode 9. And this is Deputy Jason Clark Battle. And so he shot Penelope. You're not getting that much of a description. You shot Penelope. The end, period. There's a special place in hell for you. Moving on. The next unsub that we have is from season 3, episode 18, and that is ᵘʰᵉʰᵘ. And basically this is an unsub who I feel like was overlooked. She ended up murdering her husband in cold blood. She admitted to it immediately because she actually did do it. But however, come to find out, she was also severely emotionally and mentally abused by her husband and her children. So one day she just snapped and killed her husband. Basically, like, as the episode was going, just how it was set up, because they thought that maybe she had just admitted to it to like save her children or something. Like, the way it was set up, I personally was starting to suspect that it was like insurance fraud or something, like they were trying to like scam it or something. But then it comes to find out that she actually did do it, but she was actually just as much as a victim as anybody else because she had endured years of emotional abuse. So I'm just gonna put her in the not you bitch category, because like I was shocked that it was her who actually did it, because I thought that she was covering for like one of her kids or something, or that it was like fraud. But yeah, like it was actually really sad that she was an unsub. But yeah, I wasn't suspecting for it to be her in the end. The next unsub that we have is from season 4, episode 1, and this is Sam. And basically he was a part of a team of terrorists, and basically he helped plant the bomb that blew up the SVU that ᵘʰ and what was that girl's name? That ᵘʰ and Kate were walking to, which led to Kate dying. And I don't know, especially at this point in the series, this is season 4, and I just felt like ᵘʰ could not catch a fucking break. And then he started to like show interest in Kate, and it was just, that whole thing was just so unfortunate, and that broke my little heart. So Sam, you need to repent. Like, you need to seek help, because I don't know, like the way it was set up, since it was like a network of terrorists, it was kind of like he just wanted to be a part of something. Like, I don't know, like you're still a terrorist. But so the next unsub that we have is from season 4, episode 3, and this is Benjamin Cyrus. And basically this is the episode where Reed and Prentice went undercover, and basically they ended up getting held hostage by Benjamin Cyrus, who is a cult leader, but he's also a pedophile because he's sleeping with underage girls, and he kind of has this polygamy thing going on, but it's all with underage girls. So that's gross and that's terrible. So there's a special place in hell for you, because Benjamin Cyrus, that was also the episode where he like beat up Prentice, and then he almost killed Reed, and then almost blew up Derek. So you kind of almost took out half the fucking team. And I'm a Prentice motherfucking stan. Watching her get beat up, it just, oof, it really hurt me. So the next unsub that we have is from season 4, episode 8, and this is Henry Grace. He attended a lecture that Reed and Rossi were giving at a college. Basically, he just walked right up to Reed and Rossi and was just like, okay, well, I didn't kill 5 people. Well, I killed 7 people, and there are 5 more people who will die in less than 9 hours if you don't do anything. They take him in, and he's just doing like this whole game of cat and mouse. And it does end up being true that he does have 5 people who like are being like held hostage, and kind of like this like Saw like scenario. That's what it was giving. And basically he would go by like this math theory, because he was really smart. So like they have to like follow like this whole math theory and like this puzzle to find the location of where they're at and everything. And so yeah, like that whole episode and Henry Grace in general, like there's a special place in hell for you. And this was also the fucking unsub who had like the fucking Farrah Fawcett curls and shit. Like next unsub that we have is from season 4 episode 11, and this is Norman. So basically this is like the road rage episode where the unsub would just ride around and he had like the shotgun where he would just start shooting at random people, like kind of have road rage incidents, and he would just shoot and kill people on the road. And then it's revealed that he also killed his entire family due to him being unable to process the grief of a tragedy of like his younger daughter dying. So I'm just gonna say you need to go to jail, because obviously he was really going through it, but then you also killed your entire family and then random people on the road. But it was also really sad like what happened to his daughter, so you need to go to jail, obviously. The next unsub that we have is from season 4 episode 18, and this is ᵗʰᵉḵᵗ, aka the fucking Reaper. This is one of the standout unsubs, because if you watch Criminal Minds you know who this is. But basically he was an unsub who made a deal with the previous detective on the case before it got handed over to ᵗʰᵗ, that he would stop killing for as long as he's alive. And when the agent passes away, he starts killing again. And basically he's so good at his job that they're only able to track him if he's killing. If he's not killing, then they're not able to track him or find him or anything. When the agent passes away and ᵗʰᵗ takes over the case, he starts killing again. And then that is when he eventually gets to Haley, ᵗʰᵗ's wife. And he even went so far as to stab himself multiple times so he could appear as one of the victims, because the team did end up interviewing him before they realized that it was him who was the unsub. But yeah, they did end up interviewing him because he positioned himself as a victim of ᵗʰᵗ. So he had like 9 self-inflicted stab wounds. So that's pretty crazy. And then also he later resurfaces and then stabs ᵗʰᵗ. And obviously ᵗʰᵗ survived and everything, but then along with that, after he does that to ᵗʰᵗ, he ends up tracking down Haley, who is in witness protection program now with Jack. He like kills like the U.S. Marshal who's like in charge of their cases, and then he finds Haley and Jack, and then he kills Haley. Luckily Jack survives, but you kind of left ᵗʰᵗ a widow and a single dad, and you also killed dozens of people. And you also stabbed yourself 9 times so you could appear as a victim. So ᵗʰᵗ, the door is gone for you as well. Like you're just completely unhinged, and I have no faith in you of any rehabilitation. So yeah. So the next unsub that we have is from season 4, episode 24, and this is Nicholas Brown. And long story short, Nicholas Brown, he was this brilliant scientist, but he basically got demoted from working on like really like cool world-class stuff to being demoted to working on the flu. And so he felt like that people weren't using his abilities to the best. So he took it upon himself to create his own strain of anthrax, and then he just like let it out at a random park, which ended up killing like 13 people. So what? Like, you need to repent. You don't go making like death booby traps and shit and like letting them out at random parks and stuff because you don't get the job that you want to get. Like obviously, you know, that's really sad and everything, you know, especially since you are such a talented scientist and everything, but that doesn't give you the right to create a strain of anthrax and then kill random people. So yeah, you need to repent and you need to seek help, because that's not how you respond to not getting the job that you want. So the next unsubs that we have is from season 4, episode 25 and 26. And the unsubs are Lucas and Mason Turner. And these are 2 brothers. So basically in this episode, they would target homeless people who were drug addicts and also most likely minorities who were living in Detroit as well. And basically they would kidnap them and then take them back from Detroit to a farm in Canada that they owned. And so basically we come to find out that Mason is advising his brother Lucas, who is mentally disabled, to basically do the kidnapping of the victims and everything and bring them back to the farm. And he convinced his brother, who is mentally disabled, to perform like these procedures on and tests on the victims to try and find a cure, because Mason is a quadriplegic. So after he does a test, obviously they would fail and the victims would die. He would then feed them to the pigs because they were on a farm, and obviously, you know, if pigs are eating, they're not going to leave a single crumb. So when the FBI finally does get involved, they can't find any bodies or any evidence because they're literally eaten up. But there are shoes that are left behind, and so that is the only way that they're able to identify the victims. And so it was like 89 pairs of shoes. So they killed like almost 100 people. So basically in the episode, I think they say like since Lucas is like severely mentally disabled and Mason is a quadriplegic, like there really couldn't be basically they're saying like it really couldn't be a real case built that would actually put both of them in jail. So since it's two different ones, for Mason, which is a quadriplegic, who was the brains behind all of this because he was previously a surgeon, so that's how he knew how to advise his brother. For you, I'm going to say that the door is gone, because not you using random people, let alone homeless people, like that is so evil, number one. But not you using random people as test subjects. For Lucas, I mean, you still did a crime, but I feel bad for you because I don't think you were completely aware of what you're doing. So I'm just gonna say officer, like you still need to go to jail. So the next unsub that we have is from season 5, episode 12, and this is Samantha Malcolm. Now this was one of the most memorable episodes in unsubs for me. But basically Samantha, she was molested by her father when she was a child, and basically her father, after molesting her, like every time he would just show up with like a doll or something, and as like a way to apologize, which obviously isn't a real apology, and like that's not something you can really apologize for. But basically he would give her these dolls, and then he went so far as to do shock therapy on her just to like keep her submissive in a way. And so when she grew up, she worked as a seamstress as well, and she became like very attached and obsessed with these dolls. But then one day her dad just threw the dolls away. That's when she starts killing after her dad threw her dolls away. And so she would find and target women who resembled her dolls, and she would kidnap them, but then drug them all up to where like they can't feel or move or talk or anything. So they're just there, just like alive and like are able to blink and stuff. And she would set them up in like this like tea party setup to where they were like life-size dolls and everything. Since they were all like doped up on all this medicine and everything, anytime any one of them would die, she would just dispose of them and then find another girl that resembled the doll that she was missing, and then just keep on doing it. So with you, I mean, that's insane. Like the fucking, like you're finding people that resemble your dolls from childhood and like making them life-size dolls. Like that's insane. But then also, I guess I kind of felt for her because of her childhood and like why the dolls were even in the scenario to begin with. That doesn't justify her being a killer, but I'm just gonna say like you need to repent, like you need help, and like you need to find some healing. And I hope you do find some healing, Samantha, because that was really sad what happened to you in your childhood. But also, you know, you are still a murderer technically. So next unsub that we have is from season 5, episode 13, and this is Chris and Will Summers. So basically in this episode, they were a double team, but Will Summers is the father who suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy. So basically he would choke his son, Chris, and then he would revive him repeatedly. So the son, in order to cope with his trauma of like his dad, like choking him out basically, Will Summers, the father, convinced his son, Chris, to create a website that would dare other teenagers to choke themselves and bring themselves back to life, which obviously the kids started dying as well, and that's how the FBI got involved in everything. So I'm gonna say Chris, the teenager, just from like watching the episode, I'm just gonna say officer, because obviously like you still need to go to jail as well. And then for the dad, Will Summers, I'm gonna say not you, bitch, because obviously you're the worst of the two and like you're a fucking terrible person. But just watching it unfold in the episode, I just thought it was Chris who was just responsible until like it got revealed that the father was involved, which was even more shocking. So kind of took me by surprise that the dad was involved as well. So that's why I'm putting him in the not you bitch category, because I was really shocked that you were involved. So the next one that we have is from season 5, episode 16, and this is Anita and Roger Roycewood. Basically, this was a married duo who kind of had this rouge of pretending like they lost their child at like some crowded event, like a carnival or something, and then they would like convince like the nearest stranger to help them look. But then in the midst of that, with whatever stranger is helping them, they would snatch their child and then like kidnap a kid. So they kind of had like this whole rouge, and then they would force the other kids to like participate in it as well. In this couple specifically, they would keep these kids for years and then force them to be their accomplices in these crimes. The thing that was so sad about it is like they would kidnap these children and like they would disappear for years, and then they would force the children to like change their appearances as well, so like they really couldn't be found. And so basically anytime a child wouldn't comply or would get frustrated at like the situation, they would take them to the family crematorium and just kill them. So that was like a very elaborate scheme, but then also you're killing children as well. So like the door is gone. I think that you are completely unhinged and you are terrible. So next unsub that we have is from season 5, episode 23, and then also season 6, episode 1. And this is when Tim Curry was guest starring. So he played Billy Flynn, aka the Prince of Darkness. And so basically this unsub, he was kind of like a Night Stalker-esque serial killer, and he would target families during rolling blackouts, and then he would in a way recreate a scenario that left him an orphan as a child. So basically when he was a child, his mother was a sex worker, and his mother would make him watch from the closet and would allow for her clients to assault Billy as a child, until one day he shot and killed both his mother and his client. So since then, he's kind of been chasing that feeling and wanting to recreate that scenario. So he would do that to other families. So he would find couples that had children, and then he would put the kids in the closet, and then he would kill both the mom and dad and like leave a survivor, which was a kid. And so to take it even further, with Billy Flynn, one of the families that he killed was one of the detectives who was on the case, who was working with the FBI when he was a young child. So throughout this episode, Billy is specifically tracking him down so he can kill the family that he created so that he can take his child. He sees this as an opportunity to try and kill him so he can leave the child that the detective now has as an orphan as well, which unfortunately he is successful doing that. So he ends up leaving this girl as an orphan, and he killed Matt the detective, and then he also killed the detective's sister, who he previously spared years prior, because the detective and his sister were surviving victims of him when they were children. So yeah, they left the little girl he left that little girl an orphan. So Billy Flynn, there's a special place in hell for you too. You are a terrible person, but also it's really sad and unfortunate what happened to you in your childhood, but that kind of doesn't constitute you ruining families and leaving multiple children as orphans because you can't deal with your own trauma. The next unsub that we have is from season 6, episode 14, and this is Steve. So Steve is an unregistered taxi driver, and he would target and kill women, and basically he would do that so he could turn his victims into perfumes. What? So basically he was a taxi driver, so whenever a woman would get into the backseat of his car, he was very sensitive. He had a very sensitive smell. So anytime a woman would get into the back of his car, he could tell within seconds if he liked how they smelled or not. So if he did, he would lock them in there and then release this gas that would leave them unconscious. And if he didn't, he would force them to get out of the car. So basically for his victims, if he liked how they smelled, he would put the gas in the back seat of the car and then leave them unconscious. And then he would take them back to like this warehouse, and like they would wake up and they would be suspended over a tub of methane. And then he would like submerge them and go through like this whole like chemical process of trying to turn these women into perfumes, which he did. And then by the end of it, he would like take like a chunk of skin out of the bottom of their foot. He would like keep that, and then he would store the perfume. He had like this big ass storage of just like skin from other women and perfumes and stuff that he made from other women. So the door is gone, because like, how do you even think like, I'm going to turn somebody into perfume? Like, that's when I knew the writers needed a raise, because Steve, like, what the hell? Like, you need help, man. The door is gone. You're unhinged. You're turning people into perfume. So that's where you're going, Steve. We are now at season 6, episode 18, and the unsub is Ian Doyle. I fucking hate you, because Prentice was my favorite fucking character. She still is. But if you don't know, Ian Doyle was an international criminal who Emily worked with while she was working with Interpol back in the day. And so basically she was undercover on an assignment with him. And so they basically entered in a romantic relationship, which she shouldn't have done because she was basically investigating him. But they did. So they entered into a romantic relationship. And long story short, Ian gets arrested, and then he eventually figured out that it was Emily who was working for the government. So then he then returns years later and tracks her down and then kills her, which obviously we know like she didn't get killed, but for a minute we thought she did. So there is a special place in hell for you, Ian Doyle, because I mean, you can't fuck with Emily Prentice. Like, no. No. But you're also really smart, but no, still no. Okay, so next we have season 7, episode 17, and this is from the I Love You, Tommy Brown episode. I forgot to write her name on here, so I'm just gonna put her name on the screen, whatever the unsub's name is. But she was a shitty ass person. She was a teacher and a pedophile. She would groom and target her students, and then she basically got pregnant by one of her students. And she ended up being sent to prison, obviously, because she's a predator. The child got taken away because she's a predator, and then the other parent was underage. So when the teacher finally gets released, she ends up tracking down the child that she had, and she ends up killing the adoptive parents. She kidnaps the baby, and she tries to start a new life with the student who she had previously groomed and got pregnant by, and the student who she basically raped. In this unsub, she takes it a step further by trying to name the child that she had after another student who she raped again. So she's like a serial pedophile, she's a serial rapist, and you're a terrible person. There's a special place in hell for you, because you're a rapist and you kidnapped the baby and you kind of ruined that child's life again, because that child's going to grow up knowing that his mom is a rapist. And the child almost had a good life. You know, he was adopted as a baby and had 2 wonderful parents that loved him, but his mom came back and killed them as well. So you kind of fucked that child up for life, and also you kind of ruin other kids' lives as well, because you're a rapist and a pedophile. So moving on, we have season 7, episode 24, and the unsubs are the face cards, which basically this is just a group of thieves who rob banks and hold it hostage. This episode, Will, JJ's husband, had volunteered himself in exchange for the hostages, because previously, earlier in that episode, he had shot and killed one of the members of the face cards robbery group or whatever. So long story short, in this episode, these gang of robbers, they end up shooting Will, and then they end up blowing up the bank as well. And then they also tried to like hurt Henry, JJ's son. So it was like a lot. Like JJ was really going through it that episode. So officer, y'all needs to go to jail. all of y'all. A lot of the hostages were saved, but they also still killed a couple people, and then you shot Will with the intention to kill him, and you almost kind of ruined JJ's life. So moving on, we have season 8, episode 4, and the unsub is John Nelson. In this episode, John Nelson, he is a mortician who thinks that he is Dr. Frankenstein. Basically, he would kidnap and experiment on people because he's trying to figure out how to do a leg transplant because his wife was born without a right leg. Basically, he would abduct his victims, and then he would chop off half of their leg, and then he would just kind of dump them wherever, and they would just be missing a fucking leg. And then he would use the leg that he chopped off from a previous victim, and then find another victim, chop off their leg, and then try and reattach the other victim's leg to the new victim, and then seeing if it works, which obviously it doesn't. But now you have people popping up in emergency rooms either dead, or you have them popping up with somebody else's leg attached to them. Like, how the fuck do you even explain that? How do you conceptualize that? Especially since you're a mortician, you're not a surgeon, but you're a mortician, you know that that doesn't work. And like, the fact that you have that thought and then follow through on it, like, you are unhinged, the door is gone, so that's where you're going, John Nelson. That's where you're going. Anyways, moving forward, the next unsub that we have is from season 8, episode 5, and that is Emma Kerrigan. And so basically, Emma, she had a skin disease, which eventually turned her into a hypochondriac, who believed that she could only eat foods that she grew in her own garden, and she thought that that is what healed her. Eventually, her husband died in like a car accident, which left her a widow, and so she then spreads his ashes over her garden, and she continues to grow her like vegetables and stuff in there. And so when she runs out of his ashes, she believes that that's the one thing that's keeping her healed. And so she's a hypochondriac, but it's all in her head, so she thinks that she's starting to get sick again. So she would target and find other victims and kill people to use them as fertilizer for her soil. And so she begins to kill young males to use them as fertilizers for her tomato garden. But then she even went so far as to kill pregnant women to use her placenta as fertilizer as well, so that she could be healed again, even though there's nothing wrong with her. It's all in her head. And so I'm just going to say with that one, like, girl, you need to repent. Like, you need to get it together. You need to seek help. You need a doctor. You need something. Because obviously she was very sick in the head, but then you're obviously still like a murderer as well. But then yeah, also she went through a lot. Like, I don't know. So like, you need help. You still need to go to jail, but you need help too. So the next unsub that we have is from season 8, episode 13, and this is Brian Hughes. And you may not know this name because I almost forgot about him. But basically, this is like a hemophiliac painter, and he would paint with his victim's blood. So basically, Brian, he was a janitor at this really nice art gallery, and he was also an aspiring artist. And so he was always trying to get his work noticed by the people that worked at the art gallery. And they basically told him that, you know, he needed more of a signature and he just needed to work on his craft more. And so he interpreted that as a cue to abduct and kill people and to drain them of their blood. And then he would store their blood and then use their blood as paint and make these portraits. And then he would dispose of his victims around the city near like these pieces of art. And he said that that was his quote unquote signature. So the door is gone for that one because you're literally draining people of their blood and like painting with it to try and get it in like an art gallery. Like, how do you even think of this stuff? Like, Brian, I don't think you can be helped, Brian. So yeah, you're unhinged and the door is gone. So yeah, moving on. So the next unsubs that we have is from season 9, episode 19, and this is Joe Bachner and Daria Sampson. So basically in this episode, Joe, he would kidnap and hold women hostage, and he would force them to be accomplices in his murders. So basically, this is where it gets tricky though, because how this episode was set up, it was set up as if Derek was interviewing her, trying to get her prepped and ready for like a court appearance, so she could go home because she was institutionalized at the time. And so this is after the crime has already taken place and everything. And so basically, as the episode progresses, it is revealed to the audience that Daria was the one who was his accomplice unwillingly. Like, she was forced to be there, but she was his accomplice, and that's kind of what drove her crazy, which is really sad because she couldn't handle the fact that technically she was killing other people even though she was being forced to. And so her mind kind of completely blocked that entire thing out because she just can't handle that truth. So basically her family wanted to bring her home because before she was kidnapped, she had a life and she was like an aspiring nurse and everything, but it's like night and day. Like, she's just gone and she's institutionalized now because she's just not the same person who she was due to the trauma that she endured. So I felt really bad for Daria, so I'm not going to put her on the ranking. But for Joe, you're the mastermind behind all of this, so there is a special place in hell for you, Joe. So the next unsub that we have is from season 10, episode 11, and this is ᵘⁿʰᵱᵉ. And basically this unsub, he was a cult leader and he would convince his followers that they would have to freeze themselves to death and then come back to life in order to join his cult. And so a lot of people were just popping up like frozen to death. And so the BAU had to like penetrate the cult and everything. And there's a special place in hell for you because, I mean, cults in general are just fucking insane and they're always going to be around, but you're literally convincing people to freeze themselves to death and to come back to life. Like, that's not how it works at all. That is just terrible. That's terrible, and you are an agent of evil. And so yeah, there's a special place in hell for you, ᵘⁿʰᵱᵉ. Okay, so this next unsub that we have is from season 10, episode 21, and this is Mr. Scratch. Mr. Scratch, I don't even have words for Mr. Scratch, bitch, because he is a mastermind. I will say that. So basically, this unsub was technically a serial killer by proxy because he would find people who suffer from dissociative identity disorder and he would drug them to where the victims would hallucinate and see and think that there was like shadow monsters. And so basically he would convince them to carry out these elaborate crimes. And he was also a computer genius, and he even outsmarted the BAU, and he ended up taking ᵘʰᵱ and Prentice hostage as well on 2 separate occasions. And he even went so far as to organize a huge prison break across multiple facilities, which ended up with 12 serial killers escaping. And so yeah, like, that's a lot for one person. That is a lot. So Mr. Scratch, I feel like you need your own category because I'm scared of you. So that's the category you're going to be in. I'm scared of you. Because how are you hunting down people with dissociative identity disorder and then figuring out the perfect concoction of drugs to give them and then forcing them to hallucinate, to see other things, then convincing them to kill people, and like he will convince them to like kill their families and everything. Like, it's just it's tragic. So I'm scared of you. Like, Mr. Scratch, you over there, I'm scared of you. The last unsub that we have is from season 11, episode 11, and she also appeared in season 11, episode 22, and season 15, episode 6. And this is Kat Adams and Lindsey Vonn. And Kat Adams was played by Aubrey Plaza, and let me tell you that Kat Adams had a different level of obsession with Dr. Spencer Reid. And so, long story short, she was a part of a network of hitmen, and the BAU ended up cornering her and setting her up in this restaurant where Reid was undercover, and Reid ends up going undercover to try and arrest Kat, and he basically outsmarted her. And so this is the first and only man that has ever outsmarted Kat, and so she becomes intrigued and very obsessed with Dr. Spencer Reid. Due to this obsession, Kat made numerous appearances over the rest of the series, and basically she will organize these terrible crimes and elaborate schemes from inside a prison so she can rope the BAU in so she can get closer to Dr. Spencer Reid. And she even went so far as to making the BAU believe that Mr. Scratch was killing again when it was really her behind it all this time. She also ends up framing Reid for murder in Mexico, and that's when Reid kind of had that whole storyline where he was in jail for like 6 months or whatever. And then in the midst of all that, Reid's mother ends up getting kidnapped by Lindsey Vonn. And Lindsey Vonn is like some random girl from a case that Reid and the team had worked from like 10 years ago. And so Kat ended up finding her and then convincing her to kidnap Reed's mother, which kind of took everything to a whole new level. And eventually Reed has to prove that he is innocent, so he can be released from prison. And then he figures out that Kat is behind all of this. And then so Kat makes her final reappearance in season 15, where she convinced her lover / ex-cellmate to kidnap Reed's new girlfriend, Maxine's father and sister. And so that's like the last time where she ropes them in, and then she tries to turn his new girlfriend against him and everything. And it was really a lot. So girl, I'm scared of you too, because how do you even come up with that? Like, the fact that you had them thinking that Mr. Scratch was fucking killing again, and then you organize all this shit from inside a prison, and the fact that you are just that obsessed with Reed. I mean, I get it, because I'm a Reed stan, but not you kidnapping his mom. Like, I'm scared of you. Like, girl, get it together. So that's the category you're going in. You're going in the same category with Mr. Scratch, because y'all are both just like on a completely different level. Like, you're beyond unhinged. Like, I'm scared of you. So that is all, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, this is the final ranking that we have. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know what is some of your most memorable unsubs from Criminal Minds and your favorite episodes, and who's your favorite agent from Criminal Minds. Mine is Emily Prentice. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and also be sure to check out my clothing brand Main Character The Label and my makeup brand Box Office Beauty. And yeah, I hope you guys feel safe and seen wherever you are, and I hope you guys are finding joy and fulfillment on your journey of self-expression. Until next time.